Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today's guest is going to talk to us about money, the wonderful subject of money, and the emotional subject, I should say, about money. So we have Christine Luken here. Christine, welcome to Leaders of Transformation.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. So Christine actually is the Financial Lifeguard. And I don't know about you, but I have certainly been in a position where I needed to be rescued from a financial perspective. She is a money coach, a speaker, and the author of Money is Emotional: Prevent Your Heart from Hijacking Your Wallet. I think a few of us can relate to that at different times. Certainly, I know at certain times in my life, it's been... because sometimes you're like, I'm going to do this. This sounds like a great idea. I'm going to launch that. I'm going to buy that business. I'm going to do that. And sometimes we need to, I learned early on in my business life that I needed to have my heart and my head connected. So
yes,
but yes. So she empowers her clients to rescue their financial dignity by co-creating a prosperity plan to decrease debt, increase savings, and direct spending to what's really important to them. And I love that. And so she actually has a degree in accounting and is an active member of the Financial Therapy Association, which I didn't even know existed. She has over a decade of financial counseling experience, both with individuals and small business owners. She teaches her corporate money wellness classes to employees all over the country via webinar, and she lives in the Cincinnati area. So I'm really looking forward to have a great conversation, and also really grateful. So I'm welcoming Christine, but I'm also welcoming you as the listener and the viewer, because you're the reason why this podcast exists. Leaders of Transformation is all about showcasing the people that are making a difference in the world, and also inspiring those that want to make a difference in the world, that maybe you haven't yet ventured out yet. You're thinking about it. You're like, I want to do something. What can I do to create a legacy? What kind of difference do I want to make? And so through our guests, the goal is to inspire you, to encourage you that you can do it. It's like there's such a variety of people that we've had on this show. If you haven't already checked that out, you can go to leadersoftransformation.com. All of our past interviews, over 180 episodes, are up there. But here we're talking about money, and other times we can be talking about education, we can be talking about environment, we can be talking about, there is no shortage of ways that you can make a difference in the world. And certainly there's a lot of areas that could use some help. So we encourage you to get out there, use your strengths, your passion, and your experience to make that difference. So with that, let's come back to Christine. So Christine, let's start off with you. You delved into this space of finances pretty early on, getting your degree in accounting, and then have gone on from there. So maybe give a little bit more backstory and fill in some gaps on the biography.
Yeah, well, it is pretty interesting. So while I was getting my accounting degree, I was actually messing up my own money. So
that's where we teach where we need to learn, right?
Exactly. So 4 years after I graduated from college, I hit financial rock bottom pretty hard. And that is despite having an accounting degree and despite working as the accountant for my family's multi-million-dollar machine tool business. And it wasn't because I didn't know what to do. It was because I had allowed my heart to hijack my wallet. So I was engaged to a guy, I call him Jeff to protect the not so innocent. He was in and out of jobs, in and out of jail. And I thought if I just loved him enough that he would change. And despite being on the honor roll, I'm a slow learner, and it took me 7 years to figure out that he wasn't going to change, and things were only continuing to get worse. And that really showed up in the money. Obviously, there were issues that were deeper than just the money, but it showed up really big as a symptom in the finances. And by the time I got to that point of knowing I had to leave this relationship, that it was codependent, it wasn't healthy, I had no money to move out. I owed 3 different payday lenders' money. I was behind on my car payment. I was behind on all my bills. I had past due utility bills in my name, so I couldn't even get utilities hooked up in an apartment, even if I did have money to get the apartment itself. So fortunately, my dad and stepmom said, hey, just come and stay with us for a couple of months. We won't charge you any rent. We're not going to lend you any money or pay your bills for you, but we'll at least give you some space to regroup and get back out on your own. And so one of the first things that my dad said was, okay, we need to create a plan for you to get back on your feet. And it's not that I didn't know how to budget. I mean, I was hoping to create the budget for this multi-million-dollar business, but I was bouncing my own checks at home. So there was a lot of shame and embarrassment and anxiety around money. But essentially what my dad did was he just laid out the steps for me and said, I want you to do this first and then do this and then do this. Because when I looked at that pile of bills, there was a story behind each and every one. And it was something that I got emotional about. So for example, there was the department store credit card that had $100 charge on there where my ex had bought me a Valentine's Day present and now I was going to have to pay for it. I got a little emotional about that.
Yeah.
But just having that person to pull the emotion out of it and say, do this number 1, do this number 2, do this number 3, then all of a sudden that freed me up to take action and start moving in the right direction. So probably about a year after that experience, I lived with my dad for about 3 months and then got my own apartment and started rebuilding my credit, etc. But about a year later, I remember driving to work and the thought hit me that I couldn't remember the last time I worried about money. And that came as such a shock to me because before that, it was always on my mind. I mean, I was laying in bed trying to balance my accounts to figure out if my paycheck's coming in Friday, am I even going to have enough to pay all the bills that I need to in the next 2 weeks? And it was that moment of realization where I thought, there's probably a lot of other people out there who are in that spot where I was a year ago, and they don't even have any idea how to get out of that or to know that there's another way to do things. And so that's when I thought, I really want to help people with this. I've been through this experience and I want to use it to do something good. And shortly thereafter, my church started doing a financial literacy course. And so I got involved with helping to teach that. And that eventually led to me getting certified as a financial counselor. And the more that I did the one-on-one coaching with people, I knew that's why I was put here on this planet. It's not that I didn't love my family. I can't say that I love machine tools, but I did meet my husband at work. So, there was a silver lining to that. But I just felt increasingly called to leave that job, which was scary because I was getting paid very well and it was a good, steady job with the health insurance and the benefits and, leaving that all behind to say, I'm going to devote my time, my effort, my energy into helping other people move through their money messes so that they can also, recover their own financial dignity. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love it.
Well, and it's also going into the unknown. It's the security to not just doing something different, but it's also the unknown of what happens if it doesn't work. And I think that's really closely tied to this conversation around money, is where there's a lot of people who they don't follow their passion because they don't know that, they're like, I have a family to take care of. I have a house, even if they're single, they have responsibilities and, what if it doesn't work, and certainly, I mean, as a coach, I've worked with a lot of people that have been in that situation, and it's like, well, you can plan,
Absolutely.
for the exit. You don't just say, hey, today I've known people that have done that.
I don't recommend that.
It's a little stressful. It's a little stressful to do it. And you put yourself in a position where you're trying to build a business where you are desperate to make money, then it's harder to do that. But coming back to your story, I think there's a lot of people that can relate to it, where sometimes it's not just like you said, I know how to do it. Knowing and doing are two different things, of course.
Yeah.
But then you are in a relationship with someone else that may not have the same financial values, priorities, and here they go and they're doing whatever they're doing, and now your money is tied together and you get caught into it. So can you talk a little bit about how you help people that are in that particular situation to start maneuvering out of that? There's a lot of emotion. We talk about emotion. There's a lot of emotion around that, because now there's not just the money, it's the relationship that they're connected to.
Yeah, and that was really the reason why I wrote my book, Money is Emotional, because I realized there's a lot of financial books out there that tell you the strategies to get out of debt, the strategies to create a budget or a spending plan. But what was largely lacking was strategies for how to deal with the emotional side of money. And, typically when my clients come to me, if it's a couple, they both have to come to the meeting. I'm not going to coach one person by themselves. Best case scenario, they both know that there's issues that they need to work on and they're willing. Now, sometimes one of them is reluctant. That's not uncommon. And so how I start with all of my clients is really digging into, what does your preferred financial future look like? And getting their focus off the problem onto what they want their life to look like. What does financial success look like to them? And I'll ask them this question. If you woke up tomorrow and you felt really good about where you were with your money, not necessarily that you won the lottery, but you just felt like things are good and I'm relaxed about my money, what has changed? And so that's when I start to discover first of all, what their pain points are, and what their hopes and dreams for the future are. And so if I can get a couple focused on that, then when we talk about, making changes to the spending, or, let's not be putting so much on the credit cards, they can see the other side of that. Like, I'm giving up this for this other goal here because this is more important to me.
Yeah.
And so I always tell couples, if you want to do better with your money, if you feel like, hey, we really need to make positive changes and the other person isn't on board, don't take the approach of, you're spending too much money, we need to get this under control. Take it from the aspect of, here's really what my hopes and dreams are for our family in the future. Are we on the same page with this? What things do you want to do? What things do you want to see happen? And when you get excited about the end result, then it makes it easier to do the implementation that gets you there.
Yeah. Well, and it takes it out of right and wrong, which I think there's a lot of blame that happens.
Yeah.
I've seen it with my clients. I don't specialize in the money area, but it certainly comes up, in building businesses and then what's happening at home. Right. This blaming, it's her fault if she didn't do or if he didn't do. And that goes both ways. That is not gender specific.
Right.
My dad, I loved my dad, and he was a spender. And my mom was more the saver, and she, and he used to have this saying, he used to say, let's just, give it a shot and we'll clean up the mess later. Well, that generally meant my mother was going to clean up the mess later somehow. She had to figure out how that was all going to work. But he was the creator. He was the, going out there and stirring up the dust. And so, but one of the things I appreciate about them is that they always treated it like they were in it together. Mm-hmm. And they made the decisions. Even when my dad made a decision that was a poor decision that had a significant financial impact, my mom, who didn't want to make that decision, but honored it, still said, okay, so we're still in this together. And now what are we going to do about this? But in order to do that, what you're saying is such a great point. You have to have a vision for where you're going together.
Yes.
And rather than saying you did this and now you screwed up my, my life and mess it up for me. So that doesn't work. So, why is it, let's back up for a little bit and even talk about, like, if you think about money itself, some people say, and especially in the transformational world where I spend a lot of time, people will say purpose is more important. I need to do what I love, and money is not so important, but I look at it like any relationship. If you don't value it, it doesn't stick around long. So tell us why it's important for people to actually transform their relationship to money and really value it as a resource.
Yeah. Well, and I do like to tell people to envision money almost like a person that you're in a relationship with. And, what makes for a good relationship? Respect, honesty, and positive attention. So I always ask people, are you respecting your money? How can you tell? Well, if I open up your purse, is your cash all wadded up? Is there loose change floating around in there? Are, your receipts all crumpled up, in various places around your car? Are you respecting the physical space where you have your financial transactions? Do you have some place where you put all of your bills, where they're neatly stacked and organized so you can pay them on time? If you think about a relationship, if I don't respect my husband, why should I expect him to be there for me and to do the things that I want to do if I don't show him respect? And it's the same thing with our money. The other thing is honesty. So many people are basically dishonest with themselves about money. They don't even want to face things.
So talk a little bit more about that. What does that mean?
Well, and sometimes people say things like, well, if I just made, if I made enough, if I made the kind of salary that my brother makes, then I'd be set. Really?
Right.
Isn't it more about your underlying habits? And, there's a lot of this, the people just aren't honest with themselves about the true state of their finances. And, sometimes it's kind of scary when I'm sitting down with clients and they really have no idea what their net worth is until I plug everything into their prosperity plan worksheets. And so obviously, if you're not honest with your significant other, you're going to have relationship problems. And, the final piece is positive attention. If I ignore my husband, I can't expect to have a positive relationship with him. And so many people are ignoring their money. They're not spending regular quality time with their money. And if they're married, they're not doing that together with their spouse. And I tell people, even business owners, you don't have to spend 3 hours a day or even 3 hours a week on your finances, but you need to work regular scheduled time into your calendar to be looking at your personal finances and to be looking at your business finances. And I'll even recommend to couples that they do, I call it a date night with money. And I tell them, if you're already doing a date night, spend the first 10 minutes of that talking about, whatever's going on in the finances that you need to talk about. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be a ton of time. But if you bury your head in the sand and you ignore it, then, money's going to run away from you. And the way that I put it to entrepreneurs, I think is probably a really good analogy. So let's say that you work for a boss and you go into your boss's office at the beginning of the week and you say, hey boss, what do you want me to work on this week? And your boss hides under his desk and doesn't say anything to you. And eventually you wander off. How productive are you going to be for your boss? But many people are treating their money that same way. I mean, money wants to be managed.
That's interesting that you say that, because you're you're putting it in the position of a servant, where a lot of times people actually see money as the master of them
Right.
versus
Yeah.
being the master of money.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned about the wads. Actually, I know guys don't do that. I don't know. Maybe they do, but I most of the guys I know don't wad up their, the receipts. They may do that. They're all over the car and so forth. But I've certainly met women who have wadded up their money and it's like stashed in there. I was actually just the other day talking to somebody and she was saying how, she gets tips for the the professional service that she provides. It's so she gets tips, and so she'll just throw it in her purse, throw in her purse. She's got the little pockets and everything, and it ends up in her purse. Now, there's one school of thought that would say, well, that's abundance, right? Because it's like, wow, I have money everywhere. Isn't this awesome?
Right.
And then the other side of it is like what you're talking about. Are you really valuing it, taking care of it? So can you talk a little bit about that idea, even having like how you treat the cash that you, and oh my gosh, that's another subject, is like cash versus credit, even because a lot less people are even carrying cash these days. So maybe you can kind of lead into speaking about that.
Yeah. Well, and, I don't have a problem with keeping money where you can see it, so you have that feeling of abundance, but have it be something that you're intentionally doing. So if you want to leave $100 bill on your desk, or if you want to always keep $100 bill or a $50 bill in your wallet, that's fine. But I'm talking about where, their money's all disorganized. There's 20s next to ones, next to fives, next to tens, and they don't even really know how much money they have in cash in their purse. So if you ask this woman how much cash is in your purse right now, she probably has no idea.
Yeah. That's what she said. She actually said, she's like, all of a sudden I look and I'm like, I got $1,000 worth of cash in my purse, so.
Yeah. And, I think that sometimes with my clients, if they feel like a certain area of spending is out of control for them, I'll ask them to do an experiment where they put that particular category on cash for a week or for a month. So for example, for a lot of people, the dining out category, people don't even really know what they're spending, and it can get out of hand pretty quickly. So I'll tell people, get reacquainted with your cash, and if it's a good way to control your spending. However, I leave it up to my clients as to whether or not they feel like they can handle a credit card or not. I'm not going to come jumping out of the bushes with a big pair of scissors and chop their credit cards up. Now, my clients are grown men and women, and it's up to them to decide, can I handle the responsibility of a credit card? If this is a temptation for me, then maybe I don't need to have it.
So it's coming back. Yeah. And that's a great point, is because, if it's a temptation and the whole thing with credit cards is like spending money that you don't have. Like if you pay it off, that's one thing. You're just using it as a tool. I think it's a great tracking. It's a great way to track. In fact, I find it easier than with cash, petty cash, where you have, even though that term, they call it petty cash, which I've never understood why you would call it petty cash. Anyway, talking about language and so forth, but this cash and having to, to track and to keep up with. So where did I spend it? I spend it here, I spend it there. It just kind of goes, into various, but when you have it on a credit card, then you can actually see and say, I went to this restaurant and that, this and that, and I can add it up. And actually it's more helpful that way. But, so I totally get that. Interesting. I was thinking, even with the cash, maybe to even talk about the psychology of money. I had a client once who had and some people would say, wow, I'd love to have that problem. She grew up in this family that was very well to do. And so she went on exotic trips all the time. Family paid for everything. Then she ended up with a boyfriend who paid for everything. So she had been lavishly gifted things, and everybody paid for it, and she didn't have to pay for it. Sounds wonderful, right? Except the problem is that when she went to go launch her own business, catering business, she was not used to actually earning her own money. Mm-hmm. And so she was struggling with that. And so I encouraged her to earn. So she had some small things that she was doing. So I said, earn the money and then put that cash in your wallet and like, just take it out. But it's got to be money that you earned, not money coming from somewhere else. And start to reacquaint yourself and transform your relationship around money and get comfortable with it, and even just letting yourself know. Yeah. So it's like, as I said, carry a wad of cash around. Whatever for her, that I said to her, I mean, a wad can be different. Some people, $100 is a lot. Some people, $1,000 a lot, whatever that is. For her, it was a few $100s. And so it's like, okay, so of cash sitting in her wallet. So she's had this wad of cash, and I'd pull it out and I'd be like, well, this is kind of fun. Right. And yeah, I built that, I did that. I earned it with my own hands, with my own effort. And that started to shift things for her. And she went on and certainly there takes a lot more to build a business around than just that, but that helped her to even be able to receive it and feel worthy and capable of it. So maybe talk about the psychology of money and how, if somebody, because I know I talk to people all the time, entrepreneurs that struggle with making money. They have money blocks, as some of my friends would call it, money blocks, where they have a hard time. They don't see that they're not comfortable with money, if that makes sense. So that's why they get rid of it, right? Like, yeah, the budgeting is all great, but they get rid of it because they don't actually feel worthy of it in the first place.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've just started reading a book called Worthy. Have you read it?
No.
It's about how your net worth is a direct correlation to your self-worth. So, and it's been very interesting. I've just started it, but it's really a good book.
Who wrote that?
You know what? I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize.
But it's called Worthy?
Yeah, I think it's maybe Nancy Levin.
Okay, I'll check it out. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the things that I talk about with my clients, I will have them go through the exercise of writing down everything they think or say about money. I'll say, start a note on your phone, or maybe, put an index card in your purse or in your pocket. And anytime you catch yourself thinking or saying something negative about money, I want you to write it down. And then one of the things that we do is we talk about that and say, where did that come from? Is that something that your dad used to say to you? Is that something that you overheard? Where is this coming from? And I think just being aware of your own money narratives. Like for me, one of the things I always heard growing up was, money doesn't grow on trees and you have to work really hard to make money.
Yeah.
So anytime I was to earn money and it seemed effortless, it felt like I shouldn't be getting that money because I don't deserve that money because I didn't work hard. Or if I saw somebody else making a boatload of money and it didn't appear to me that they really put in much effort for that, I thought that was unfair and that they weren't worthy of having that money because this was supposed to be a grind.
Yes. Oh, I got that lesson too.
Yeah.
I'm in that camp with you.
And so I think part of that is just understanding those money narratives so that you can say, is this still serving me? And I will actually have people rewrite those money narratives or those negative statements into a new positive way. And so, we've all heard about the money affirmations, and there's, a lot of different ways that you can phrase them that help to make them more powerful. One of my business coach, Jen Scalia, in her book, she talks about, there's a couple of ways that she uses to phrase positive affirmations that I really like. And one of them is to say, it's normal for me. So it's normal for me to make money from my website without much effort. It's normal for me to have, $10,000 in my business account at all times. Or the other one is, of course I'm debt free. Of course I have $50,000 in my savings. And by saying those or writing those over and over again, you're basically normalizing the state of your finances that you want.
Yeah, you're creating a new normal for yourself. Right. Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than repeating things like, I'm always broke, everything's too expensive, I'll never pay off these student loan debts. It's like, oh, stop saying that. But it does. It takes that process of, self-discovery. And one of the things that I tell people is you can't just read one book about money and feel like you've arrived. This is something that you have to be continuously working on. Money touches all areas of our lives, and it's important that we get this right. And the one thing that I tell people, and I see this a lot with self-employed creatives, where you're right, they say, your purpose is more important, changing the world is more important. But what I tell them is, you and money can change the world. If you are financially healthy and you've taken good care of yourself and you have a surplus, that can magnify the amount of good that you can do if you didn't have the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
well, if you have to constantly run back and figure out how you're going to take care of your family, I think I was mentioning to you about Tony Pennell's from MindSHIFT Money, and he talks about, it's like, if you have to constantly be worrying about that, yeah, you're not able to do what you need to do. You can't, you're not focused because you're like, how do I pay this bill today? Or how do I make my rent for the end of the month? And you're just having a different conversation going on in your head. That's why this conversation, this topic of money is so important, because like you said, it impacts all of us. Right. And, and it creates so much of the, the most stress for people. It's almost like this, this necessary evil. People even look at it that way. And certainly, like I was saying, I relate to the working hard. I remember even, my dad worked very hard. My mom and dad both. When I was young, they had garage businesses, and so they worked 7 days a week. And and because it was a gas station, so it was open all the time. And my dad was serving, helping people. And people's car would break down on a Sunday night, and they'd call him and say, "Hey, my car broke down. Can you come help?" And all this stuff. And that just played into other things that we did later on, different businesses and so forth, always serving and helping people. And then, and you see somebody that had it easy and it just came effortless. And you're like, I remember thinking, what the heck? I'm working harder than that person. And of course, in the entrepreneurial space, this goes for any space, but especially in the entrepreneurial space, we get paid for performance. We get paid for results. We don't get paid for just putting time in. Right. So it's a whole shift, and definitely this transformation. We talk about leaders of transformation, transforming the world, which sounds like this big lofty thing. But how do you do it? You do it on a day-to-day basis, one person at a time, one conversation, one relationship at a time, and you look at the fundamental aspects of our life on a day-to-day basis. And this is certainly integral to that. Now, what makes you, like you mentioned it already a little bit earlier, but there are a lot of money gurus out there. People are even talking about from an emotional standpoint as well. What is distinct? How do you differentiate yourself even in that market?
Yeah. Well, what I found is that usually the money gurus come in two camps. They are either the money manifestors, we're going to meditate on money. We're going to do money affirmations. It's all of the, we're doing all the inner work. Yes. And then you have the other camp of financial strategy. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And that's the outer work. What makes me unique is I bring those two things together and say, okay, we know that we have to do this outer work. How can we use this inner work to supercharge our emotions so that we are excited about doing the outer work, so that we're motivated to do it? And bringing those two things together in a very practical way that's easy to understand. And that's not overly extreme.
Yeah.
There's, some of the money gurus out there, the things that I hear is, they're judgmental, things are too extreme, I'm not going to cut up all my credit cards and just live on cash and drive a beater and eat beans and rice for 3 years while I pay off my debt. I don't believe in that. I don't even call it a budget usually. I call it a prosperity plan. And spending is part of the prosperity plan, as is saving and debt reduction. And I feel like it's a very individualized thing. So I don't have this follow these 7 steps and, all of a sudden everything is going to work out fine. All of us are individuals, and what works for one person might not necessarily work for someone else. My husband's an engineer. He's not tempted by credit cards. When we first started dating, his car was paid for in full. He had a very modest mortgage that he was paying extra on. He had one credit card that he paid in full every month, and he had a huge pile of money in his savings. And
you're like, hallelujah, this is a lot different than
that's pretty much how it went.
No, I don't deal with it.
So you own your car, you have a valid driver's license.
It's refreshing, different. No, it's a shift from, if you think about your previous relationship to this relationship, and what did you do to shift and to attract that person as you shifted in your own view of it?
Yeah. Well, and I think it was just that I realized that someone who was financially stable, that was an attractive thing. And, a lot of women say you have to love a bad boy before you settle down with a good man. And sometimes you just got to get that out of your system. Well,
so you also work with women who have been divorced and to help rebuild. So talk for a couple minutes about that, and then we'll talk about your new program that you just launched.
Yeah. So one of the things I realized is when people go through a divorce, especially women, it is one of the periods of time where bad emotional money decisions are highly likely. And, obviously when you're going through a divorce, or like in my situation where you're breaking off an engagement, even if you're not legally married, it's an extremely stressful event, even if you're the one that wants to get out. And there's also a lot of financial things going on. When you get divorced, it's like, your expenses double and your assets get cut in half. I mean,
right.
That's a hard time to be going through, not just emotionally, but also financially. So that's one of the reasons why I created my 30-day online program, Financial Dignity After Divorce. And what it does is each day there's an audio lesson that talks about a particular money issue in the emotional side of it, and basically walks them through how do we apply this to our particular situation. So that way they can minimize the likelihood of making a bad decision with their money while they're going through this super emotional time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and that's actually something else that came up when you were talking earlier, that the emotion, when you talk about the gurus, sometimes I've heard some gurus talk about taking the emotion out of it, but it's you can't do that, right? It's like, and actually, but if you translate that emotion into a positive, like what you were talking about, the affirmations, that you actually use that emotion, we're going to use it one way or the other, but use it for good, use it to build up your,
right.
your wealth and your, even good money, habits on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. I just read about this study a couple months ago, that it's been scientifically proven that people make decisions emotionally. And they did this study with this group of people who had damage to the part of their brain that allowed them to process emotions. So I believe that they maybe were stroke patients. Okay. And so they couldn't process emotions. And the interesting thing was they could not make a decision. And so what they realized was the point when a decision is made happens in the part of your brain that processes emotion. So the people could explain why chocolate ice cream was a good choice or why vanilla ice cream was a good choice. But then when you would say, so which one do you want? They would just start explaining again why each one might be a good choice. They could never actually make the choice. So we do make decisions emotionally, and what most people don't understand is that with practice, we can direct our emotions. Yes. And, we can, allow those negative emotions to, we can honor those and we can process those and let those go without letting them hijack our wallets the way that I did in that relationship. So, we can't take the emotion out of it.
Yeah, I heard years ago, I forget who said it first, but we make emotional decisions and then we justify them logically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, well, that's what I bought that really hot sports car. I was going in to buy a sedan for my family, but I bought that sports car because it's just such an awesome, look at all these features and benefits and so forth, and you can justify it. But it really has to do with the fact that you want a fun car to drive. But
right.
And I love what you said there about relationships. One of the takeaways, from what you said a lot here that's been really valuable, was the fact that it's a relationship and to treat it like a relationship, respect, honesty, and positive attention. And what relationship, is absent of emotions? I mean, that's the best relationships are when you have those emotional connections, but you don't let them, and just as a great, comparison is, but you're not attached to it where it's controlling you, that it's, it is a relationship. It's an exchange. So I love that. Now you have a program, a new membership program that you just launched. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it is the Manage Money Like a Boss Collective, and it is a membership group for self-employed creatives. And one of the things that I realized in the financial space is that creative people and creative entrepreneurs especially are largely ignored by the financial industry, and or they're patronized, where financial people feel like, I need to bring things down to your level so you crazy right-brained people can understand this, this logical money stuff. And, all of the self-employed creatives I know are really freaking smart. I don't have to dumb this down for them. What I do is I talk about money in a fun, interesting way that honors their creativity rather than ignores it. And so I talk about all kinds of different things about money and business, and I bring in guest experts to teach on different topics that might not be my particular expertise. So, like bankers and CPAs, even like marketing people and PR people, because all of those things in your business affect the financial prosperity of your business, either directly or indirectly. And I wanted something that, I want creatives to have a good, positive relationship with their money, because like I said, you and money can change the world. And if we have all of these kind, creative, generous entrepreneurs succeeding in their business and succeeding with their money, then, they're going to be giving to causes that are important to them, to help the environment, to, help people who are in poverty. That's really what the goal is for me, is to help these creative entrepreneurs have a great relationship with their money and to manage their money like the boss that they are and not be hiding under the desk. And
a great visual.
Yeah, and so they can actually find that program at managemoneylikeaboss.com.
Awesome.
If you want to look
Thank
at
you.
that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So managemoneylikeaboss.com. So we'll make sure that that gets included in the show notes as well. What is your main website?
My main website is my name. It's ChristineLuken.com. Or they can go to moneyisemotional.com. That redirects to my website as well.
Great domains, by the way. Yeah.
Thanks.
That's good. That's good. Well, this has been so interesting. And I know that, did I mention Wei Hung. He's got a podcast called The Money Lab. Definitely that would be a great connection for you to be on that podcast. And Wei is awesome and talks about the money mindset. And so yeah, really, really cool. So a little plug there for Wei. Awesome guy. I'll introduce you, connect you guys afterwards. But actually, that's also for our listeners. If you're interested in connecting with leaders of transformation and you're actually somebody who is making an impact out there, you're actively out there, then we have a Facebook group, which Wei is part of that group. Christine's part of that group as well. And it's called the Leaders of Transformation Community. You can find us on Facebook and apply to be part of that group. It is a tight-knit group of really awesome people. So so I'll connect you to Wei in that group. And
awesome.
It's been really great. I mean, this is like we talked about, this is an important topic. We just scratched the surface.
I know.
That's why the books are being written. Your programs are out there because this goes deep and into so many areas of our life. And how do you build this relationship with money? So thank you for just sharing a little bit of a taste of it here and how we can disconnect from that, that prison that, and I'll use that word as a strong word, but a lot of people feel like they're in that prison and they just want to have that. That's why they call it financial freedom.
Right.
I want financial freedom. What does that mean? Even it's interesting the words we use. I want to have freedom from, your finances. No, you want to have the freedom to use your finance, have more than enough finances so you can do what you want to do and make the difference you want to make, take care of your family and all that. So, so getting out of that trap. But anyway, so thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And for our listeners out there, I always say, it's time to take action. When you listen to someone and they share information, information on its own has very little value. It's where you apply it it's when you apply it, that's what makes the difference. And so I would encourage you to take something that you heard Christine share today, and maybe it's just being aware, stopping and saying, hey, where is my money going? How much am I spending on dining? And a lot of times it's amazing. People say, I don't have money. But the reality is you have it. You're just choosing to spend it in an area, which is maybe a quick fix, and not actually putting it in the place that's going to make the greatest impact. The things are truly important to you. And so Christine shared a little bit about that here. And I'd encourage you, if you need more information on that, you want to learn more, then go to christineluken.com or managemoneylikeaboss.com and check out her program there and take action. Leaders of transformation, that's what we do. We take action, and that's how transformation begins. So I encourage you to do that. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.